Emergency rant video! Emergency rant video! Hey guys, this is Huck4014. This is an emergency rant video, and I'm ranting about the philosophical gamer.
So I've had this channel for about 6 months now, and it's been quite an interesting learning experience to say the least. Now, most of you guys watching out there, you guys are pretty based, and you guys understand that I'm merely pointing out the reality of the shitty world and economy that we all have to live in today. But unsurprisingly, there are some opposing viewpoints, mostly from delusional out-of-touch boomers and some older Gen Xers, who, unsurprisingly, disagree with pretty much everything we say here. Now, to be fair, some do come from a good faith place of healthy, productive disagreement and constructive criticism, but others are just plain old haters. Now, I've spent a lot of time to really analyze and reflect on their main primary talking points to see if they might have a point. Because, you see, part of growing up and maturing is realizing, hey, you're not always right, and you should always make a concerted effort to hear out both sides of an argument. So, I've been doing this a lot recently, and as I was doing this, I realized something quite profound, something really interesting. Out of all their criticisms, I haven't heard a single logical/rational argument from them for why it makes sense for Gen Z to work a 9 to 5. And I do mean every single one of their arguments for why Gen Z should bother working in this fucked up economy is an emotional argument made mostly for the sake of political correctness and sounding good from an emotional standpoint, but they don't have any logical basis behind them. So I'll give you an example. One of the most common rebuttals to my videos that I've often seen and heard in the comment section is, but you should get a job so that you won't live with your parents and be a burden to them forever. This is a perfect example, guys, of an emotional argument and not a logical one. This is because in this current horrible economy that we're all living in, there's no actual logical proof that working a 9 to 5 is gonna help you move out or stop being a burden to your parents. It may have been a logical argument in 1995 when, rent was a lot more affordable and wages were much higher, relatively speaking. It is not an argument today in 2025, and here's why. You see, arguing that you should work a 9 to 5 so that you can move out of your parents' house only makes sense from a logical standpoint if the 9 to 5 will actually pay you enough to move out of your parents' house in the first place. If it won't actually pay you enough to do it, it defeats the whole purpose in the first place, and hence the argument becomes a pure emotional argument and not a factual one. So you're only making this argument because it's the politically correct thing to say, not because there's any actual logical, factual basis behind it. Because does working a 9 to 5 actually allow you to move out these days? Well, I'm sure all you young Zoomers out there watching, you guys who actually live in the real world, make real wages, and pay real rent prices, you guys already know the answer to this question, So for you, this is even a stupid question to ask. But for all the delusional boomers out there watching, let's answer it anyways using facts and logic. So, according to Landlord Studio, by the way, this is a software specifically developed for landlords, okay? This is not my personal opinion. You can look it up. It is a fact. According to Landlord Studio, a landlord shouldn't even consider a tenant's application unless he's making at least 3 times the price of rent per month, okay? So, to find out how much you have to make to be able to afford to rent your own place and move out of your parents' house, all you got to do is multiply the current average rent of $1,748 by 3, and you get an absolute staggering figure of $5,244. This adds up to an annual salary of just under $63,000. Okay, keep in mind, guys, this is the bare minimum you need to make just to be considered for a rental application. Let me once again stress, none of these numbers are my own personal opinions. These are all from official sources made for landlords themselves. Now, let me ask you this. How many young, let's say 18 to 25-year-old guys out there do you know of who can just move out of their parents' house and get a job that pays $63,000 a year? Probably none. I mean, outside of a very few exceptions, maybe some tech founders, some influencers, there's probably no guys who are just going to walk out there and make that much money. So this means that for 99% of guys, over 99%, getting a job isn't going to actually help you move out of your parents' house at all. So telling someone to get a job so they can move out is purely an emotional argument and not a logical one. Now, this leads us to debunking the second main argument I often hear, and this is somewhat of an extension, or you can think of it as like a cousin of the first argument, which is you should start working because you shouldn't be a burden to your parents forever. Now, from a logical standpoint, this one is even worse than the first one, because not only does it not make any logical sense with the current state of the world and the economy, this argument actually backfires and works against the delusional boomers who make it. So what do I mean by this? If you work a 9-to-5 in this economy, you will actually be a far bigger burden to your parents than if you just stay home and play video games. I know that's not what people like to hear. I know it's not the politically correct thing to say. But statistically speaking, it's a fact. And I can prove it to you pretty easily using just basic facts and numbers. So let's get one thing straight first, okay? Getting a job and working, it's not free, all right? You have to spend a lot of money on a car to get to work. You got to spend money to buy clothes for the job interview. I mean, even these stupid BS minimum wage jobs want you to wear something nice and fancy just for the interview before they even hire you. You know, a lot of jobs even want you to pay for your own work uniforms these days, which is ridiculous if you ask me. But anyways, working and getting a job is not free. You have to pay to work, okay? On top of this, if you want to get a decent white-collar job, you know, like because their argument is that you should work so that you can move out of your parents' house. Now, the salaries that are actually going to pay you enough to move out of your parents' house, they're going to require a college degree. You know, they're not going to be like entry-level jobs. You're going to need to have a decent white-collar job to be able to actually move out and live on your own. Now, these jobs are even more expensive. Because don't even get me started on the absolute astronomical amount of college tuition fees, degrees, certifications, so on and so forth that you're going to have to pay, you know, to get one of these jobs that will actually allow you to move out. That will actually help you make the $60,000 a year you need to make to be able to move out of your parents' house now. Let's just be honest here, okay? No 18-year-old, no matter how hard he works, who just graduated high school, is going to be able to pay for $30,000 a year for college tuition all on his own. I mean, if you are able to go to college, it is because your parents are supporting you and paying these exorbitant college tuition fees for you. Let's just be honest about this. And hence, you are going to be a way bigger burden to your parents if you do work than if you don't work. I mean, it's just an objective fact, guys. I don't know what else to tell you. Based on numbers and math, $30,000 for college tuition alone, not to mention you still have to pay rent and living expenses when you're going to go to college. All right. This is going to cost more than a few $100s per month for food or a one-time purchase. You know, a one-time $500 purchase of a PS5 if you stay at home living with your parents. You can make an emotional argument, you know, that going to college and living on your own sounds better from an aesthetic standpoint than staying home with your parents and playing video games. But you can't make a logical argument that a $500 PS5 costs more than $30,000 for college tuition. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what you want me to say. 500 is not more than 30,000. That's just not how numbers work. Objectively speaking, it is just not how numbers work. This is just further proof that every, and I mean every argument against what I say here on this channel that I've heard is just an emotional response with no logic or reason behind it. Okay, so if you've watched this video and you're now wondering, so what's the solution? You know, what should I do then if working isn't worth it? How do I pay my bills? How do I find a purpose in my life? I'm glad you asked, guys. This is a great question. So believe it or not, there are actually many pretty fulfilling alternative lifestyles for young people these days where you can live quite well without working a traditional 9-to-5. I've researched them all and I put them into a comprehensive tier list video right here. So if you're interested, check it out. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.